When you're 17, pregnant, and homeless, no one looks at you like you're worth anything. But sometimes, the world underestimates the quiet ones. And the truth doesn't stay buried forever. They thought they got rid of me, but I was the seed they tried to crush, and I grew roots. Act 1. The fall not with warmth or softness, not with bedtime stories, or forehead kisses, or home-cooked meals. She loved her reputation. On the outside it sparkled. People saw what they wanted to see. A beautiful home, a successful single mother, a daughter with manners and piano lessons. Inside, though, it was cold and suffocating. Everything had to stay frozen in place. Appearances had to be maintained. Secrets swept under the Persian rugs. Stephanie never spoke of him, and Uncle Rick, who floated in and out of our lives like a stray dog, only ever said, "He wasn't worth mentioning." That was the theme of my life. Things not worth mentioning. She loved the version of herself she saw through the lens of others, and she loved silence, especially when it covered things she wanted to forget. I told myself I'd figure it out, but the morning sickness got worse. My silence became suspicious. She stormed into my room holding the test like a weapon. And one morning, when I forgot to flush a used test in my bathroom trash, it all exploded. I always knew my mother didn't love me, not the way other mothers did. Growing up in Stephanie Reynolds' house was like living in a snow globe. There was no point. I just started packing. From a young age, I learned not to ask questions. Cardboard boxers kept some of the wind off me, but it wasn't enough. I kept my hand over my belly, whispering to the life growing inside me, "I'm sorry. I'm trying." And then he was gonna move dates. Never answered my calls. I should have known better. I offered to sweep floors behind diners in exchange for food. One older woman gave me half a sandwich and a water bottle. She looked like she wanted to ask questions, but didn't. I didn't have a plan. I just walked. His arms were crossed, but he wasn't angry, just indifferent. Like he'd seen it coming. She just placed a plate of eggs and toast in front of me and poured a cup of orange juice. "But if you want to talk, I'm here." There was a bench tucked in its archway. I collapsed on it, half hoping I'd disappear in my sleep. I told her about the baby, about how I was kicked out, and then I told her who the father was. We watched TV. We folded laundry. I helped her with some of her church bulletins. She told me funny stories about my mom as a kid, ones that Stephanie never would be dared admit. But the test turned pink anyway, and my world shrank. Wrinkles, soft eyes, gray curls pulled back under a scarf. She saw the test, screamed about the family's image, and told me to pack. I heard her rustling around in the attic. It was a few impulsive moments that meant more to me than they did to him. When I told him I was pregnant, he ghosted, deleted his social media, never showed up to work again. She was on her knees, pulling me into her arms. Fancy cars, spa trips, donations to charity, auctions that got her name printed in gold ink. When I woke up, my body ached in 100 different places, but there was warmth, a trust fund, divided equally between his grandchildren. Stephanie was made the trustee for your portion until you turned 80. She just nodded like she understood everything I wasn't saying. Safety. I could smell coffee and bacon from the kitchen, the sound of soft jazz on a radio, the feeling of someone caring whether I was okay. Grandma May. She just wrapped me in a handmade quilt and led me to the guest room like she'd been waiting her whole life for me to show up. I learned to smile when guests came over and to disappear the moment they left. I memorized my mother's warning looks. I counted the seconds between her sighs and her explosions. I mastered the art of invisibility. I didn't know who my father was. I didn't understand all of it, but I saw the numbers and the total at the bottom. Hundreds of thousands. Gone. Until I got pregnant. I hadn't meant to. Of course not. I was 17. I'd only been with him 3 times. I kept it a secret for weeks. I wore layers. I skipped gym class. Stephanie didn't knock. She never knocked. Who is he? She demanded. My heart was beating in my throat. It doesn't matter. I'm keeping the baby. Her face twisted in disgust. Keeping it? You think this family needs a bastard baby dragging it down? You've ruined everything. I didn't argue. Uncle Rick watched from the hallway. That night, I walked out with a duffel bag and a coat too thin for the late March chill. I slept behind a Chinese takeout place. My first night. The next day, I found a park with a covered pavilion. The wind cut through my clothes. I stole packets of crackers from a gas station. On day 4, I found the church. I'd passed it a dozen times over the years. First, Baptist, white stone walls, ivy climbing up the bell tower. But someone found me first. Baby girl. I opened my eyes to see a face I hadn't seen in years. She dropped her grocery bag. Bread and oranges spilled out across the steps. But she didn't care. My God, she whispered. What did she do to you? Me brought me into her home without a single condition. No lecture. No passive-aggressive glances. That first night, I slept for nearly 16 hours. I shuffled into the kitchen with sleep in my eyes. May didn't say a word at first. You don't owe me an explanation, she said gently. I nodded, unable to speak through the knot in my throat. That day, we didn't talk about the past. On the 3rd day, I finally told her the truth. His name was Aaron Simmons. He was 20. He worked with me part-time at the hardware store. We weren't dating, not really. May didn't look shocked. What did Stephanie say when you told her? She asked. She didn't even let me finish. May's lips tightened into a thin, grim line. She stood up slowly and disappeared into the hallway. An hour later, She came back with a box marked to state, P. Reynolds, my grandfather's name. Inside were bank statements, legal documents, letters, and a manila envelope I hadn't seen before. She opened it with shaking hands. This here, she said, pointing to a notarized trust agreement, was your grandfather's final wish. She flipped through the statements. Year after year of fees, withdrawals, maintenance costs, money moved from one account to another. She took it, I whispered. May nodded. All of it, and she used it for herself. What can we do? She picked up the landline. Call Hollins.